Hello and welcome to Movie Phone. For Blockbuster Shrinks, press 1. Blockbuster Shrinks is playing now.
All right. And we're back with another podcast. This is John, the Redhead Family Therapy Guy.
And a mic.
And we're doing another one.
We are.
How you feeling about this one? This one was it's such a great. I've watched this show a kabazillion times. This is one like we taped off of HBO. And for whatever reason, I loved this movie. And so I watched it a ton.
I like Indiana Jones. I haven't seen it as much as other movies. I would say my favorite is still probably Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's probably the one I've seen the most. And so Temple of Doom, I've probably seen the second most. I would say probably number 1 would be the most, number 2 would be the second most. And I don't think the second one really, for me, it's not as nostalgic as the first one. But once again, I wasn't ever a huge Indiana Jones fan. I mean, I loved the ride at Disneyland, and I had a whip and a hat, or I had like a rope or something as a kid that I run around with, right? You know, so there's nostalgia there. But yeah, this one was interesting. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. It was fun to watch.
I just love it. Well, to me, as I was watching it, it was just like, it's like just pure adventure. I think that's what I loved about it. I think the other thing I really loved about it is I think I identified with Short Round a lot because I don't even think I remember seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark when Temple of Doom came out. I think I was too young, or maybe I didn't see it because it was like theaters, and then we had VHS, but I don't think we had it on VHS. And so I loved Temple of Doom, and I love the whole Indiana Jones thing. It was like mysterious and exotic. And I really like the third one. So I would say like the most nostalgic for me is the second one. I really loved the third one because I was a huge fan of Sean Connery. I was a big Sean Connery fan. And so I thought that was like super cool. And I loved what's the third one called? Holy Grail?
Crusade.
Or the Crusade, the Last Crusade.
Yeah, the Last Crusade, I think is.
So I love the whole Grail thing. You know, I wasn't religious as a kid, but I just loved the whole Grail thing.
Sure.
I thought that was really interesting. I think because it had the throwback of like the Knight Templar guy just chilling there at the end. You know, and I love the whole like testing. We should do that one because I really like that one. So Raiders of the Lost Ark for me actually was, I would say, is the least favorite of the trilogy because I don't remember seeing it as a little kid, and then I didn't watch it a ton until I was older. I really like it, but I must have watched it somewhere in there because I remember being really grossed out by the one guy getting killed by the plane blade. You know what I mean? Like I remember like that was like The thing about this movie is it was almost like horror. It's a really gross movie. Like it's a really gross, like the Temple of Doom is a really like,
it's
buggy,
definitely
grossy
interesting
movie.
and I feel like as a kid I thought it was
cool.
Whoa, yeah. And then as
that
an
was
adult
really cool
watching it, because I haven't seen it for probably
I
10 years.
I've been more than that for me.
Yeah,
a lot longer.
Watching it as an adult, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And even the whole way, like I read that I think they're both going through divorces, Lucas and Spielberg, or they're
like
having
a dark time or something
issues or something. And I feel like the whole way they portrayed, like the whole relationship thing, it kind of got a little like, I was like, what is the point? Yeah, like what are we doing here? Like, let's move on to the adventure. Like, let's get more into the adventure and less.
They were
into
a
this
little caught.
relationship.
Yeah, they were a little caught in the. Well, she just wasn't, in my opinion. I think as a kid, I don't know how I saw her, but as an adult, I just was horribly annoyed by her the whole time. She was such a prima donna. I really was just annoyed by her.
I was annoyed with how they had her, like how they directed her to act that way.
No,
it
sure, but
like,
it's just the character. I'm just
like
embracing
too
the
much,
character.
right? It was like it was overboard.
Or she should have come along somewhere in there. You know what I mean? At some point in there, she should have stopped being the screaming helpless damsel, you know what I mean? Which didn't she have somewhere where she like punches somebody and kind of takes up some strength, but she really was kind of a
Yeah.
helpless damsel the whole dang
And
movie.
even
It
my
was like,
wife a
come
couple
on,
times was like, "What the heck?" Like,
get over it already.
I don't. Yeah, it seems like she would have. Like, I think it
At
would have
some
been
point,
different in real life.
yeah, at some point in the journey in the deep heartland of
Yeah,
India, you would have been like, this is my lot.
just
But you,
anyone would
yeah,
grow
yeah,
and
right.
experience, right? And
Like at
and
some
so they
point,
really played off this like helpless person with
damsel.
her. But
Yeah.
I think for me, even growing up, for me, the real adventure, like the part of this movie that I love is once they get to the palace. Then
Yeah.
you get like this awesome, like the Temple of Doom comes into
Yeah.
play, right? You get
Once
this
you,
awesome. The rest of the movie, I'm like, oh, I love it. Like that's what I remember loving about
yeah.
Indiana
Yeah.
Jones.
Yeah. Once they get into, once he like takes the statue and does the boob
Yes.
press, from
Yep.
there on
Yep. The
is where
boobs
it's
started
like,
all.
yeah, it all starts with the boobs. There must be a message there that the real adventure starts when you fondle a statue and find the secret passageway. Is that the message that
That is
there's a
the
secret,
message of Indiana Jones.
there's an adventure to be found once you grab the boobs. I
Yes.
don't
Find
know.
the boobs and then
And
commences
then
the
the
adventure.
adventure commences with, of course, the woman will rip out your heart somewhere along the
And
way.
I, to be honest, like that for me is what I remember as a
Oh
kid.
yeah, as a kid we were like, oh man, it
And
tore out his
especially
heart.
the,
It
in
was
the
pumping in his hand.
like the, what do you call that? Like the railroad scene. I'm sure there's a term they use
A
for
mine cart,
the
like the
mine
mine
cart.
cart.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That, and when we were watching it, Heather
Oh,
was
it's
like, "Oh
so
man,
good.
this is like Donkey Kong," and it
So,
reminded me of Donkey Kong growing up. How you have,
oh, that's
I think it
funny.
was, I think I remember playing that on the maybe the N64, where you have that
I
donkey
never
cart, mine
played.
cart, the mine
I
cart
know of
scene
the game. I might have played it at a
or
friend's house,
level.
but I didn't play it a ton. But yeah, I know it reminded me of the Temple Run video game. But
Yeah, that's a good one. I feel like
I'm gonna have to
I feel
download
like
Temple Run again. It's been a while. It's been a
there's
while.
all types of things I want to do after we talk. I'm like, oh, I get real nostalgic. So for me, I love like Indiana Jones is adventure. And like
Yeah.
I said, it's hard for me to get a, a lot of nostalgia just because as a kid I didn't watch a ton of Indiana Jones.
Oh,
Like I have
watch this
other
movie.
things,
I watched this movie so many times.
but once they got to the palace, like everything came back and I could remember everything. Before
Yeah.
that, I think as a kid, like the stuff before that, I just probably didn't really care much about maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But once they got
No, I
Temple Doom, I was
totally
like,
did.
oh, I totally remember everything now.
No, the dinner scene,
Yeah, the dinner scene.
I had totally remembered the whole dinner scene where
Oh,
they're
the
just like
monkey
hoping
brain.
the mo
Yeah.
yeah, and the
I
bug, the
can't
guy
ever forget
slurping
the monkey brain.
the licking the bug juice out of the thing. But
So
it's an
disgusting.
interesting one of the things that I was trying to figure out is like what it's a really interesting opening. I thought the opening was just so I don't
Oh yeah,
I'm trying to
remind me, what is the
remember.
opening on this one? I can't. I
Well, it's
watched the
the
movie a
broad. It's like it's
little.
real Broadway. Like it's real Broadway. It's
Oh, that's
real.
right. They're
And I
in
wonder,
China, right?
yeah,
And at that
in
like,
Shanghai or something like
yeah,
that. And I
casino
just
or something.
right. And I wonder. I'm trying to remember if I saw it in the theater because I bet this would have been such a cool movie to see in the theater with that opening scene. It's so big. And the one of the things my wife said, she's like, "Those Asian dancers are all American." She's like,
Well,
they're all,
yeah, it felt like most of the
those all
Asian
American.
people were
Yeah.
not Asian. I mean, there were Asians in there, but what was interesting to me was like just how they had like that scene. So they have these dancers, and they're just dancing like they haven't heard any of these shots or any of this commotion. Like
I know that's
it's
really
so
interesting.
funny to
That's
me, and
like,
I was like,
well,
what?
there was something like when the guy falls over bleeding, where then the chaos ensued. But yeah, like somewhere in there. But I was wondering what the message was with the setup for the film with anything goes. I'm like, oh, this is really deliberate. Like anything goes. Like, what is that?
What do
And
you
I
mean
couldn't.
anything goes? Like just the whole.
That was the song that's
Oh, the
going on.
song was
They're
anything
singing
goes.
anything goes. Dun, dun,
Oh,
dun, 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 dun. You know, it was really
yeah, I didn't even notice. I
yeah.
don't
And so I was like, oh,
know.
I'm like, that's really deliberate. I'm like that, are they just setting up this idea of chaos or maybe they're going to descend into this world that is otherworldly You know what I mean? Because it's
Hmm.
this third world country, like backwoodsy, because they're in like the 30s or something, right? Like the 20s or the 30s. So it was probably more unruly or kind of the
Well, and
Wild
it
West
does
or
seem
something.
like this group of people, and they're trying to like worship a god or something, or gods. Is that kind of what the premise of the Temple of Doom
Well, I
is?
think yeah, I wanted to do a little bit more like research, because I was trying to get it straight in my head, because it was like the ancient temple had been reclaimed by this boy king or something like that,
Sure.
and he's obviously
The
kind of like a
puppet.
shadow puppet for
Yeah.
the dark priest that wants to,
Is he
sacrifice to the
gaining
god of
power
whatever.
by doing this, or is it really just
I think
worshiping?
s- I think so. I don't know. They don't like they don't like give you some narrative of like he's trying to gain power to then go out
Yeah.
and take over the world or anything. Like, there's the Nazis in the third movie or whatever. But yeah, there was I felt like it was this notion of power, of them claiming the dark arts, so to speak. Um and kind of descending into that world. Of course, Indiana Jones is functioning to help this town where their sacred stone has been taken, and now that sacred
Yeah.
stone is their protection or their life
Hmm.
force or whatever. And Indy knew about the stones and knew that there were more stones. Like, I think there's supposed to be seven, but maybe three have been found or something like that. And so, he's been charged with that. And it's interesting that he so willingly goes. Was there some pull on them? I guess it was
Yeah,
like
there
for
was.
glory. It was like, I mean, I guess that's the researcher in him wants to find the artifact. I guess that's the narrative of Indiana Jones, right? Is that he wants to find these artifacts.
Yeah, they kind of
Um,
kind of swayed him, if I remember right.
because
That's
there
the
could be
whole reason
more.
he showed up.
There could
Yeah,
be more.
and there. Yeah, I feel like I mean maybe anything goes just applies to kind of this priest where it's like at all costs, right? I'm going
Do whatever it
to
takes.
worship this god, and it really is. It's like whatever needs to be done, including controlling a child.
Yeah, 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 totally
Like
manipulating a
manipulating and controlling.
child. Well, the one of the thing too that really struck me with this movie somewhere along the way, I'm like, the body count in this show.
Oh,
It's
it's
like
yeah, it's
the
constant.
Indiana Jones movies, the body count is high. I mean, just all these minions, all
Yes.
these Indian minions that will just keep coming. I guess that they're all under the spell of the rocking, horde of followers that he has or whatever. You know what I mean? From the being possessed by the dark arts or whatever. But yeah, the thing as a kid that really stood out to me, of course, was the burning heart, that the heart could continue to beat
Yes.
not in his chest. And I remember it being just so gooey and
And he's still
ooey and
alive.
gross. Yeah, he's
Like
still
that was
alive as
crazy.
he faces the.
I think that's the probably one of the most prominent scenes in all the Indiana Jones movies that even as an adult I could remember
So
without
yeah.
seeing the movie for years and years, right? It just that, especially as a kid, that probably imprinted on me like, what the heck?
What is that? I
What
know
is
it's
going on
so
here?
dark too. Like, what again? Like, what are the metaphors in
Well, I think
being like an evil priest has you, and he's tearing out your heart and sending you into the fiery pits
for me it
and
starts even at the beginning.
celebrating.
Like I feel like the whole trend is kind of this dark, or I don't know, it's seems different to me. And I remember the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I feel like, and I'm going to go back to the female character, I feel like in that she's strong,
She
and
is.
then in this one it's like
She's just a damsel.
beyond, like even it's like a caricature of
It
a
was a character. Yeah,
damsel.
well, she didn't really grow, right? Like, I mean, she didn't
It
really
was,
progress.
and that for me I think was really bothersome, and I'm not sure why it bothered me, but I think it was just so distracting to me, like it pulled me away from the
Yeah.
movie because it was, I feel like it was so exaggerated. And I
Yeah, it's
asked my wife after,
just a
and she was like,
fable, just
yeah,
a
she said the same
throwaway
thing, like
character.
what is going on? But then it's a throwaway character that they have be a main role. And so I think that kind of started it, where it's like, hey, this is definitely different, right? This is different. Something's going on. And then it gets really, yeah, dark, right?
Yeah, maybe that was one of the exclamations of Lucas and Spielberg being like, they couldn't have any resolve or progression because they were in this place with females in their life that was all breaking. I mean, maybe it was just a metaphor for them and the constant breakup. Because yeah, she's just, well, she's just annoying. I mean, she's
Well,
just annoying. Which as a
even
kid,
when
like I said, like,
Indiana
go ahead. I'm sorry.
even when Indiana Jones and Data, what's his name in this roundup
Short
or
short
short round,
round,
short
roundup,
round,
roundup, short
when
round.
they're in the trap, right, where the top the ceiling's coming down and the spikes are going to kill him, and they're saying, hey, we're gonna die.
We're gonna
She's
die.
worried about like her nails or something,
I
and I'm
broke a
just sitting there
nail.
thinking like, no way, like
I
it's
remember as
too
a kid,
much.
I remember as a kid thinking it was, I mean, as a kid, I thought it was really funny. I mean, I
Sure,
remember as a kid
sure.
thinking it was really funny. And I think the thing that I didn't notice her as much as a kid was because I was so focused on Short Round. Like for me, this movie was so exciting as a kid because I was a kid, and that relationship is a really interesting like surrogate father, and he does
Sure.
progress, you know, he gains, I mean, he essentially like wakes up the boy king by, you know,
Yeah.
delivering him out of with the fire where he wakes him up from his black death dream
Uh-huh.
state or whatever he's in, that the whatever spell's been cast on him with the dark arts or whatever.
I do love that even in the dinner scene where Short Round is kind of like, hey, he's just
Yeah, trying
being
to
a
befriend
genuine person.
kid.
And
Yeah.
then the prince just kind of is like staring off to the side, right? Not even paying anyone attention. I love
Hmm.
kind of how Short Round has that effect. And I feel like he has, an effect in Indiana Jones also.
Yeah,
But
well,
he has, go ahead.
he kind of draws out of him the
Yeah.
fatherly character,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that notion of protection, that notion of Short Round, and you know, using him and empowering him to be, you know, a sidekick, watching out for him, having the paternal kind of protective influence. So that part, you know, is where I focused. And I think when I watched it again, I was annoyed by her, but I kind of just shut her off and was kind of
Well, but
reliving.
once again, you really like for me, I feel like it's once they get to the palace that it's like,
Yeah,
oh, awesome. And I think that's because the focus isn't so much on her. I feel like the
yeah,
beginning of the movie,
it's
it's
the
really
adventure.
kind of, yeah, focused on
Yeah.
her
And a possible love story or
complaining. And
something like
yeah, and
that.
it's just so heavy. And then once they go kind of into the Temple of Doom, then it's
Mhm.
less and less. Although they're still there. Like when they mention, oh, there's diamonds in these
Yeah,
uh
she gets all like,
what are they called, like rock stones in the stones, right?
yeah.
Then she gets all excited and is focused on, and they're like in a life or death situation. It's just so exaggerated, and that I think as an adult kind of pulled me away. And maybe it's because I only have daughters, so I'm thinking of my daughters, I'm like, no,
Right.
they would have growth. But that
Sure.
really affected me, I think, for the first part of the movie, to the point where I was like, man, what is going on? Like, what? And I don't know that I think I'm thinking this more so as I think back now. I don't think I was thinking it in the moment so much. But then I feel like, yeah, once they got to the palace and in the Temple of Doom, that was the turning point. And I feel like that became exciting to me. Everything before that was kind of, it felt like filler
Draggy.
or
Yeah,
fodder.
it felt draggy.
And I feel like from what I read, like what you're saying earlier, it had to have been influenced with where George Lucas and Steven Spielberg were at, which is such an interesting mental health component of how
Yeah, it
much
is.
our mental health affects everything
What
we do in life,
the story
including our
we
work. And
tell,
yeah,
yeah, the
isn't it
story we
crazy?
tell, the arc, the well, yeah, we project. That's the thing that became more and more clear to me in graduate school. We had the person of the therapist training model where we had to kind of look
Hmm.
inward and identify what our themes of, you know, dysfunction were,
Yes,
and we had to develop awareness of what kinds of cases and scenarios that dysfunction could come out, because we can really be blinded, and we can
sure.
really hedge up the growth of our clients. Like if we haven't grown in an area, we might not be as apt to push a client to grow in an
Well, and
area.
even understanding what triggers us, right? what
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
what really grabs us. And I think that's important just in general, right? For anyone, whether you're a therapist or
Oh,
not.
absolutely. Well, because you could be constantly projecting and trying to work out your
Mhm.
crap, and you mischaracterize a whole swath of a group of people
Yeah.
because of your bad experience. Like if you have an alcoholic parent, for instance,
Yeah.
which I did, and
Mhm.
you just see all people of one category having these kinds of limitations or problems because
Well,
it's like the
when
same
you
scenario
see
of a
them, you
person that
feel the
says,
pain you felt growing up at
right,
times,
yeah, you
right?
get
It
triggered. Yeah.
becomes real to you.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me when you have someone come in. You'll have a client, or we'll have a client, or I've had clients where they'll be like, "Yeah, I don't trust anybody," and you'll get into their history, and they'll have one very important relationship that
Mhm.
has deeply betrayed them, and it's like you're gonna project, like you're gonna assume that no one else on the planet is trustable because you had this one important figure, you know,
Yeah.
that when you were 15 and they were 17, you were their close friend, or you dated for 2 years, and they completely took advantage of you, weren't considerate of you. It was like they were a stupid 17-year-old, person. And you're going to assume that every man that exists in the universe is, like that because they were like that. It's really fascinating how
Well,
pervasive that can be.
and I think you have a great point there. I think it becomes pervasive because of the story that your mind's developed, and
Yeah.
how you're not just your mind, but your central nervous system, your body reacts to anything that reminds you, because
Hmm.
it's like we've talked in the
It's a
past.
defense
In that
mechanism. Yeah.
moment, yeah, in that moment, it becomes real danger
Oh, for sure.
instead of perceived danger. And so then it creates this inability to connect, or to have relationships, because the your body and your mind together are convincing you that
Hmm.
this is the same.
Well, and isn't it interesting? It's interesting for you to say that phrase. It really jumps out at me, the perceived danger, because like almost all of the danger in all relationships is perceived.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, unless you're with a really toxic, violent person, there's almost no real danger. I mean, like they might be upset at you, they might be disappointed or overreact and misjudge your intent or character in a situation, but
I would
that's
say
still all
yeah.
perceived. It's still
In
all
in
perceived, and
most cases,
subjecting yourself
yeah,
to what their perception is of you instead of you having
sure.
your own sense of self.
And I would say, yeah, the majority, right? We could say that. So even if it's 51% of the time, but the majority are perceived,
It's
or it
crazy.
creates this realness. Even with my wife,
Sure.
there's times all the time where my brain and my body are telling me, no, this is going on, even though I know my wife doesn't think that way. But
It's
in that
really
moment,
pervasive.
it becomes so real that
100% real.
I can't be in my wife's mind. I can't think, no, she doesn't think, like, that's crazy to think that way. She doesn't think
Right.
that way.
She's
But
not
in
gonna
that
leave.
moment, it's real. Like, I'm
Yeah.
in the bear is right in front of
I
me,
know, it's so
and I'm gonna be
fascinating.
attacked.
The nervous system and the brain, it's really, well, I guess in one respect, we ought to be grateful because, humans are resilient and can survive. And so
Sure.
to me, the brain capabilities that contribute to mental health issues also have function to keep
Yeah.
humanity alive for a decent
Yes.
amount of time. And so, it is an incredible hindrance, but obviously it has made us
Well, it's
deeply resilient.
necessary, right? I think
Yeah,
kind of the idea is balance, right? And that's kind of the life goal here, is how do I have balance so that I can have more connection? Because really that's what we want, is we want to be able to, and I understand some people are maybe more introverted and it's very tiring to experience that, but we want to have connections with people. We want to be able to talk to people. It's really interesting how my wife and I go on walks, and the girls too will go on walks, kind of scattered throughout the day, or even my neighbors, like I'm always saying, hey, how's it going? And oftentimes I don't get a response back, right? And that's because, we're stuck, right? We're stuck in whatever's going on. I'm not saying they're having any major issues, my neighbors, or anything. They're just stuck, like they're in their own thing, and or maybe they're scared to say hi sometimes, and scared of, oh, is this going to create a conversation? I don't really want to talk right now. I just want to get in. But that's, we crave those things whether we realize it or not, and that creates more comfort and peace. And so I think balance is really always the goal, not looking
Yes,
at
as best as we can
extremes, but
manage.
trying to pull it in more to the middle. And you have to, like you said, self-therapist, you have to create an awareness of what's going on, and
Well,
that comes.
if you don't, you're just gonna be constantly playing out your trauma. You know what
Yes.
I mean? You're gonna be vilifying people and overreacting to people of stories that aren't even real. Like
which
you're just
which
living
what
in a
Yeah.
diluted mass of self-loathing
And what results is
and
pain.
yeah,
And it's self-inflicted. I don't mean that
yeah,
insensitively, because there's two people in a relationship, but
absolutely.
there is a lot of agency and choice in how we react to situations. And I think that what's evident in that is this movie with the female character. I feel like, oh,
Take some
but I love the
responsibility.
movie. Like, I have to say this: Temple of Doom is, like, it is my.
It's an
I
awesome
really
movie.
like Raiders of
L-
the Lost Ark for whatever reason.
Well,
But Temple of Doom, I love. It just really, like, I will always remember once they get to the palace. Like,
the
that for
the
me is,
thing
I
about
remember the rest of the movie. It's awesome.
this movie, there's so many things that are just wonderful. I mean, it's such a big film.
Yeah.
There's, I mean, the shots, like, you know what I mean, like the plane
Well, I
montage, like,
think I looked at the budget, and it's like double the budget of the first movie. Like, it went from 10 or
yeah.
13 million to like
Well,
20 million to
it's a
produce it.
gorgeous movie. I mean, just the
Hmm.
different sets. Like one of the things I loved about this movie as a kid was the plane where they're flying from Shanghai and then they end up over India, like the
I will
map
never forget the map.
overlay,
Yeah.
the map overlay with the thing. I just love that. I love maps. I was realizing that we were watching Lord of the Rings last night.
Oh, fun.
We started a Lord of the Rings trilogy. I watched the old Dude, we haven't done the old animated Hobbit. We've got to
Yeah, I
do
saw
that.
you watching that. I think
Oh, I
you had, or
love
was
that
that what you
movie.
were watching? Were you watching the
Yes.
Hobbit cartoon?
Yes. It's a
I told
lullaby.
Heather, I
It's
was
my
like, John's
lullaby.
watching it again.
I
I
watch it
struggle with that one.
all the time.
We
It
we
is,
definitely have to do it and talk about
dude.
it.
It is literally a lullaby. It is a lullaby to
It
me.
is musical for sure.
Oh, it's so I love the music. All right, anyway. So that but one of the things in the Lord of the Rings, we're watching the extended version, and I love like the whole map. They show like the map in the
Yeah.
opening and where Frodo's like talking,
Well,
voiceovering
even
the
if you
location. I love
get
maps.
like the Stormlight Archive books, like the actual books, they have cool maps in them, and that's why I
Oh, I
got the
love
hard
that
copy,
stuff.
because you and I listen to books way more. I used
Yeah.
to read a lot more,
No,
especially
I
in
listen to
grad
everything.
school and undergrad, but yeah, listening. But I, with those books, I was like, I have to get the hard copy because I want to be able to see the maps and look at them,
Mhm.
and it's really fun when you
Yeah, the-
have a world to go, like a visual world to
yeah.
go with the story.
So this movie is just so visually exciting. And again, like the thing that really struck me after watching ET, which is our next one, and this, like, man, the sound quality
Oh, John
is
Williams is
so
amazing.
good. Well, you know, one of the other things that's so satisfying about watching this movie when they were in the adventure part after they descend into the depths and witness, you
Yeah.
know, the awfulness of human sacrifice. Um, and you know, you've got the kids all under the spell and they're in slavery. But the thing that's so satisfying is when he punches somebody. That smack sound that
Yeah.
is nothing like what a person sounds like when they get punched is just so satisfying. Like I just loved it. Like it was like I loved it when he punched somebody. It's like
I feel
like
like
that,
there's
just
certain
such a
sounds, yeah, that are
profound sound
like,
quality.
there's certain sounds that are, I feel like, are unique to Indiana Jones, or maybe not unique's
Yeah.
not the right word, but I
No,
remember
that's
them
right.
from
No,
Indiana
yeah. Yeah,
Jones,
no,
like the
that
whip,
smack punch
the punch,
sound,
yeah, the fighting sounds.
yeah,
Oh,
are just so satisfying. The Foley people like knocked it out of the park for sure on this. The Foley art folks that, you know, did this movie. But yeah, that opening scene, there were so many weird and strange things I was watching, like too, like that. I think that, you know, from our point of view, like the crazed man with the machine gun, you know, they like skewer somebody with the flaming like meat
well, I have questions
thing.
for you about the opening scene. So you have
Yeah,
this
talk to me.
you have the what's that called? The lazy Susan? Is that what they're called? The little
Where
things that you spin around
they're
on the
spinning the
table?
diamond around and the poison and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have this, and there's this whole like story here of I I want the diamond,
No,
but I've done a service for you or something,
no,
right? I've done
he had the little statue. He got the little statue. It's like an
yeah.
urn. It's an urn of some
So what does he
former,
want the diamond for? Like
like I
what's
think
the
that was
deal?
payment. I think it was just payment for him getting, he wanted this rare diamond, and that was what he was
See, I don't
exchanging,
remember that
the
about Indiana
emperor's
Jones.
ashes.
Is he all about like I remember Indiana Jones being a professor, right, and a teacher, and he's an archaeologist. But in that situation, it just seems like he's like uh for hire guy, almost like a
Well, I think
mercenary, but for
no, I think
archaeology stuff.
yeah, I think there's a part of him that, there's this sense of preservation of history, but I think there's, and I think that's maybe the arc of Indy, over the stories, at least through the third one. I don't know about the fourth and fifth and all that kind of stuff, but at least for the first three,
Hmm.
there definitely is an aspect of the persona of a professor where they want to be known to publish or known to find
Yeah.
some rare incredible artifact. And so I think, I think Indy's sights are set on being the guy that finds some and has some incredible artifact, and maybe trading this urn of ashes of this emperor and getting the diamond is, means to an end for the next adventure,
And
maybe the diamond
is
or
that like
something like
how
that.
archaeologists work nowadays? I just kind of I'm
I don't
losing
know.
my voice. I always
I think
assumed archaeologists were like funded by like museums or
well, yeah, but if they're
schools
not,
or
they have to have,
governments.
well, yeah, they are, but if they aren't, they aren't, right? And so I
Yeah.
wonder if it's just like he wants to fund whatever other things he wants to be able to chase down. But yeah, I think I don't know that world, but I would
And what
imagine you
was
have to have a stakeholder that's, got disposable resources and they're fine to kind of front you.
the whole purpose of the opening scene really that Shanghai experience? Was that really just to introduce the female character then? Because I didn't really like what why did we
I
need
think
that
that's why
whole
I was
scene?
asking about the message of anything goes, because it was like
Okay.
that to me. It was like that had to be, because I was trying to kind of think about the same thing. Like, where are we jumping off from? And I don't
Yeah.
think I don't think I remembered enough from how Raiders had ended to know
Yeah,
if
I
there was a
don't remember either.
connection. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't remember if there was a connection of where they were starting off from. So it just seemed like Indy had, yeah, it seemed like what I took from it was, okay, so there's this notion of anything goes, like, because he is I mean, because it's interesting, like, Indy doesn't have any, I mean, he's just this college professor, but he doesn't have any problem killing people. He just mows people down. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
of course, it's typically in self-defense. He's not like just some guy going out and killing people, but like he's not bothered about it, and like his sidekick is, dies in the opening part of the movie where he gets shot, and he's putting himself in danger. So I guess it's this notion of like, and she says it really deliberately, like, oh, you're for glory and wealth and fame, like that's what you're
Mhm.
about. Which, Indy's character really does have an arc in this movie where he surrenders that for the village, for the sake of the village.
Sure.
He brings back, I mean, he's a savior to the village. He liberates their children
Yeah, and it starts
from,
raining like
yeah, and like,
immediately,
well,
right?
even once you get back to the town, it's like it's like when you get there in the opening, it's like this depressed third world
Yes.
nightmare. But even when they're coming back with the children, like it's lively again when they show up, even
Yeah.
before the children kind of all show up. So Indy has a wonderful arc in this story, descending into darkness, confronting. I mean, he becomes possessed, right? I mean, he becomes
Yeah.
they possess him with the dark blood, and they torture him. He's
Yeah,
kind of
who
a,
breaks some of that? Is it Short Round?
short rounds. Yeah, I mean, and that's part of
Like he
the,
pushes them, right? Pushes
yeah,
Short
because
Round and
yeah, I think he doesn't, he flame him, he burns him, right? Doesn't he? Isn't that
oh,
how he
that's
wakes him
right.
up?
Yeah, he
And so
grabs a
he's like,
torch.
he's totally like beating the crap out of him or being rough with him, and short rounds able to kind of get through to him. So short rounds the other hero of this movie because he helps the hero,
Yeah.
and that's out of this paternal need, like he needs indie to be okay, which is why I this is why I love this movie, because like I said, I really identified with Short Round and his growth, and you know how he's like this little ninja master. You know, the one scene I was really shocked. I'm like, got this like 9-year-old boy. I mean, he's young,
He's taking out
and
everyone.
he's like, and he seriously is working his karate moves like on
He does
everybody, like doing
something at one
spinning
scene.
backgrounds. He's like
Yeah.
doing spinning back kicks and like forward lunges, and
He
these
does
like, you know,
something
these
at one
Indian
scene where
minions are just
he like
falling all over the place.
kicks one guy and the guy ends up knocking like four other guys over and then they don't get back up. And I know as a kid, like, yeah, I was like, oh, he's awesome. As an adult,
Yeah.
I'm looking at these, I'm like, oh, just, some of the cheesiness of
Well, that's just because it's just an adventure movie.
it
I mean,
is, it's fun.
that's one of the things that Spielberg did a great job, is he just made these adventure movies. And this is the thing though, but this is like a continuing thing that I'm noticing with 90s and 80s movies that's wonderful, that we've lost in a lot of movies now. It's like everything is trying to be so real now. It's like
Yeah.
Indiana Jones isn't trying to be real. It's not trying to be
Yeah.
real. It's an adventure.
Well,
I mean,
there's
like, come
no
on,
way. I mean,
the
the
mine cart, like, you know,
does the
montage.
jump.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like,
and
it's
not only
ridiculous. It's
that, like the
fantastic. It's
raft falling
yeah.
out of the airplane at
That's
the
the most,
beginning of the
that's the
movie,
most
you're just
ridiculous
sitting
thing.
there and you're
Yeah,
like,
I'm like,
yeah,
yeah,
that's
they like
not
jump. He's
happening.
like, jump on the raft, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm like, this is so ridiculous. But at that point, like, once they started, like, you know, parachuting out of this blown, you know, this
With the
plane
raft, yeah.
with the raft, I was like, this
They're
is
sitting
like,
on it. They're not holding it
right,
above
yeah,
them. They're
like, yeah,
sitting
like yeah, like it's ridiculous. Like, I just was like, this is great. Like, I
It's
totally bought
amazing.
in. Like, I
Yeah.
bought in, and you just go along with it because it's fun. Like it's a
Yes.
fun adventure, and it's like, I feel like there's an aspect of that that's really been lost in movies nowadays. Like, you know, it's not trying to be real. It's Indiana Jones, man. Like, it's a fun
Yeah.
adventure. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's an adventure movie. It's not trying to be real. It's a
Well, and you see
wonderful,
that
fun story.
in our
That's
culture
gross.
also. I know that with the newer Star Wars movies, one complaint I had from a lot of friends was, well, that can't happen. Like the bombing scene in episode 8. The one
Yeah,
comment I had from a lot of friends was, this idea of, well, how, like, why were the bombs just falling
right.
on? And I'm like, I don't even think about it. I'm like, who cares?
Yeah. I actually did think about that during the movie, but yeah, but it's like we've got
But
the
we have
force
to have
and
it
you
be
have
so real,
lightsabers.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's like a conversation that needs to happen nowadays, because I
Sure.
think there's a whole genre of movies that aren't being made, and there's something that's being lost in the movies. And part of the reason why too, like, they have to be socially culturally accurate, or, like, you know, people have to be represented, which I appreciate, you know, and I think can be honored. But it can also, like, it's just a movie. Like, it's just play. Like, it's just fantasy. It's just a story. And stories, absolutely, you know, I love
Well,
stories,
I
and they,
wonder if it kind of I wonder if it caters to maybe movies back then were just made to be made. And maybe, I think that's still true, but I think maybe more movies now, at least movies that we recognize, or maybe you and I see from our lens, would be catered more to, can we make everyone happy, instead of focused on,
yeah,
can I tell
the
a fun
story.
story that I
That's
want
a
to
great
tell.
point.
I don't
Yeah.
know if that's true, but it seems like,
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
there's
it's
been
like,
a trend
you
towards
if you want to make
something.
a lot of if you want to make a lot of money, you have to make a story. Like, for instance, I
Sure.
I remember hearing some of the discussion about Top Gun. It's like, well, Top Gun's not going to do great internationally because it's an American movie. Like, it's, you know, it celebrates American military, and like, China's probably not going to Top Gun's probably not going to do great in China. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so it's like there's a lot of movies that are being made for those international audiences, and so the stories do have to kind of generalize. And so, yeah, there's not as much uniqueness uh
Which,
in movies. There's not throwaway movies, right? Like, there's not as many throwaway movies. Like, now they're going on to Netflix and stuff, but they're not coming to the theaters, you know.
well, and something that's interesting, there is a lot. Yeah, there's a lot. So even with Top Gun, it's 885 million it's made worldwide. 47% of that is international. And I think that's pretty good, but
That is good.
it may not do good in China, which is a big box office draw.
Oh
And I
yeah, like
think movies
there's been
cater.
movies that have done incredibly well. Like, well, for
Yeah.
instance, like the Godzilla movies almost do crap here, but the Godzilla movies, I think
Well,
over in Asia.
Transformers was
Yeah,
a
exactly.
one that was a huge, like the what was
Huge.
it, the fifth Transformers or six? It didn't. It made so much money internationally, and China was a huge contributor to that. And that's an
Hmm.
interesting point that you bring up. Is that yeah, movies seem to cater maybe to this global market, which is fine. That's great. More people can enjoy them,
They're just going to be more
but then
vanilla.
maybe it draws, yeah, it draws
Yeah.
some of the things out of it that maybe make movies more unique or something. I don't know
Or
if if we're
interesting,
saying the right
or
things here, but
yeah,
yeah, there is something there that has
well,
changed.
less artsy maybe, or I'm sure those movies are still being made, but
Well,
anyway.
even like, as a kid, it was funny, with the whole like the female arc. And even now, like when I watched it the other night, I laughed a little bit, but then it's like not as funny to me as an adult. My girls were laughing. They thought it was really funny. So I think there is something to that too, where it probably depends on the demographic that has the most money, right? So there's
Mhm.
usually age ranges, right? And you can look at that, there's trends. And so maybe movies are catered more to that. I don't know. I feel like Indiana Jones, I don't know. As a kid, I loved it, and
Oh,
so
so
maybe
fun.
yeah, I didn't watch it a ton, but I feel like maybe they just don't make, or maybe I don't watch movies that are catered. I don't know. Was Indiana Jones really tailored towards kids, or was it just tailored towards
Well,
everyone? I don't
Temple
know.
of Doom sure was. I
Yeah, it
mean,
doesn't seem
all of
like
the
it would
movies
be.
are pretty dark. I mean, the first one's
Although when I
pretty
was a
dark
kid, I
too.
watched all type. I mean, movies.
Well, that's
It's
again, this
PG,
is well, this actually, the Temple of Doom was the first ever PG-13 movie. I thought it was Red
I thought
Dawn, but
Temple of Doom was PG.
no, it's PG-13. It was the first ever PG-13 movie. I thought it was Red Dawn, but it was actually Temple of Doom because he rips out his heart. So they
Crazy.
made an exception, because if they had made it an R movie, they wouldn't have made as much money. They all know this. R-rated movies don't make as much money as PG movies,
So
because
where do you find, like, I'm looking
that's what
on
I came
Amazon
across.
and it says PG.
Oh, really? Well, I read an article that said it was the first PG-13 movie,
I
so maybe
wonder
they
if it was
downgraded.
PG-13 at some point.
I think. I mean, I'd have to just Google it. I don't, but
Let's
I could
see.
be wrong. But that's what I remember reading that somewhere.
Yeah, IMDb
Has it
has
PG?
it as PG.
I bet it's been
It could
downgraded.
have been PG-13 at some point. But it's
Yeah,
interesting because as a kid, I watched all types of stuff. Like we
yeah,
watched Terminator 2 all the time, and
yeah,
Predator and Command, like a lot of Arnie movies. It's just really interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm making sense, but it is interesting your point too. It does seem like just the fantasy, or the fantastic, I think I used that word before. I don't know that it's actually a word. Fantastical part of movies isn't as prevalent now, um as it used to be.
You were asking about you were asking about like the lore, and one of the lines I wrote down was, "We follow the footsteps of the Shiva." So I wanted to look up what that was.
Yeah, when do they say that? Is that in the Temple
I
of
think
Doom?
that's like at the dinner scene.
Yeah, is it?
They talk about that
So
because
what's a
because
Shiva?
Shiva's
Do we
probably
know?
the god with all the hands, maybe.
Oh yeah, is that the god they're worshiping?
Yeah, because they're
Oh, it
walking,
is.
they
You're right.
follow in the footsteps of Shiva. Because
Shiva, one
Indiana
of the main
Jones,
deities of Hinduism, whom Shivites, I think that's how you say it, worship as the supreme god. Among his common epithets are Shambhu, Shankara, Mahesha. So it is a god. Shiva and his family at the burning ground. So yeah,
so because that's one of the things that comes up in that scene where Indy asks a hard question about like the dark sword past or something,
yeah.
and the boy king's like, we don't have anything to do with that here,
Oh, I do
whatever
remember
that
that. Yeah,
was,
because
like he gives that.
the leader of the village, right, was concerned about that, and that's where kind of that premise came from Indy to question.
Yeah, I didn't understand too. There's also some political, vibe, because there's one of the British folks at the dinner that's come to visit. I guess because India was a colony of the UK, I guess in the 20s maybe. And so, because they're also a part of who saves Indiana Jones at the end, after he
Well, and
The bridge
it
scene.
is like a restored palace now, right? It was kind of vacant, and now there's this restoration of power. So I wonder if, yeah, the
Maybe
if
that's why the British
England
is
sent
there.
over,
Yeah, they're like,
yeah,
oh, maybe they're becoming too powerful, or what's going
yeah,
on with
or to
this? We need
develop
to
a
check.
relationship possibly, or if they
Yeah,
did
keep
control.
it in
I
check.
don't know what years India was a
Under
colony.
colony
Yeah, I
of the
don't
UK.
know when that was, but that I think, yeah, maybe all those, and it could be all those together, right? As
Yeah.
to why the British were there. And so yeah, it's interesting. Um, I feel like I feel like anytime you get Lucas and Spielberg together, there's probably a lot there, and there's a lot of reasons for the things going on. But for me, I feel like Indiana Jones is all about the adventure, right? So I don't notice a lot of things. Even with this movie, I think the thing that jumped out to me, which was just blatantly obvious, was the whole female thing. The other things, like you've mentioned, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, well, even if we say like it's an adventure, but an adventure to what end? I guess for are we saying that Indy was an adventure
I always think
for
of just an enter for
glory?
my own entertainment is what I think. When it comes to
They
these things,
made
it's hard for
this
me to
so
think
I could
deeper.
have an adventure.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, like I said, I mean, for me, the thing that was so nostalgic was because I definitely connected with Short Round and this idea that I could do something too. I could help as well because Short Round does really kind of save Indy and wake him, which is
Yeah.
kind of an interesting
Well,
metaphor,
he is
right?
the
Because
hero,
you,
right? He's the reason Indy even survives and can do what he does.
well, and that's a really interesting metaphor, right? Because you have essentially that Indy is awoke from the darkness,
Hmm.
the dark sleep because of a child, right? It's like the child mind is like plastic enough or pliable enough that it could see through. And it also had hope. You know, it's the child that didn't give up on Indy,
Well, I
you
feel
know.
like oftentimes he Short Round is aware of things that Indiana Jones isn't, right? And trying kind of drawing that. Wasn't there something in even like the crushing scene we're talking about where the spikes are coming down from the ceiling and from the ground? I feel like Short Round says something. I feel like he's kind of the
The conscience. It's like the
excuse me,
Jiminy
yeah,
Cricket.
like yeah, he's like the stable character throughout the movie. It's kind of, you know what it reminds me of? Big Trouble Little China,
Mm.
where you have you have Jack, right? Is that right? Jack? Oh shoot, what is his name?
You're talking about Kurt
Jack
Russell?
Burton. Yeah,
Yeah,
Jack
Jack.
Burton, right?
Yeah.
So you have Jack, who's kind of all over this place, this like hero that's not really the hero. The real hero is his friend. What was his friend's name in that? I can't think of.
The Asian guy?
Yeah, what was his name?
I don't remember.
It's kind of like that movie, and they're around the same time period. Maybe even the same year. Were they both like 85 or 86, maybe? But you have this like hero character who really, I feel like the real hero is probably the sidekick character, right? And it's a
Hmm.
really interesting thing where for Short Round, I agree with you 100%. As a kid, you're like, holy cow. And even as an adult, I'm looking at this little boy, right, who kind of is the, like you said, the conscience or the steady, like the steady
Steady force of
person through.
hope, or
Yeah, yeah,
the one kind of
exactly.
wiggling through
Just
everything.
like
And
Jack's friend in Big Trouble in Little China, where it's so fun, right? Indiana Jones
oh
is
yeah,
fun. Jack Burton is so much fun, but
yeah,
the
yeah.
real kind of silent hero are, and it's funny enough, they're both Asian, right? One's an
Yeah.
Asian young boy and one's an
Well,
Asian, older
yeah,
guy.
they've got this capability, right? There's this aspect of Asian cultures of like
Yeah, which I love. It's so interesting.
intuitiveness or wisdom or persistence. Like there's this real notion of persistence.
Yeah, like steadiness. I feel like diligence,
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah,
diligence,
like
absolutely
yeah.
for sure, right? Like they'll just work themselves to death. It seems
And
like.
I mean, we are. I mean, I've not ever integrated myself within within the Asian culture to this is kind of my
This is a
view of
whitey
what it
looking
is.
out,
Yeah.
looking from the outside in.
I
You know
did.
what's fascinating is Short Round, the actor. He did this. He did Goonies, and then he did
Yeah,
nothing until just recently.
I know. So
He's done Everything Everywhere All at Once,
I'm
which I'm
pretty sure
dying to
he's
go see that
always
movie.
been in the industry just behind the cameras.
I don't know if he has.
I think
Maybe
he
I.
I
Let's
think
look.
he has been like behind the cameras, but then yeah, he just recently
Starred.
was in that movie. I haven't seen it yet, but it's like the I think the female from Hidden
I just said it.
Dragon. What's that called?
I'm trying to tell you. I just said it. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about the movie that the main lady is in.
Oh, Crouching Tiger, Hidden
Yeah,
Dragon.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
We've got to do
Thanks.
that. That's one of my most favorite movies too. Yeah, he hasn't done anything. Like he took a break, and really didn't do anything from 87 to, I guess he's done a couple little things.
Yeah, he's done some little things, but I think he was working behind the scenes.
Well, I'm looking at his IMDb and it doesn't have much.
Well, no, it wouldn't be because I think he was like a
writer.
shoot. I remember reading this somewhere.
Oh,
No,
yeah,
not anything that would get him credits. It was something with I can't remember now. Like camera maybe, or it was something just behind the scenes.
Okay.
Like maybe the tech part. I can't remember. I saw that or read it somewhere, and who knows if that's true, right? I don't think it was like an interview of him and him saying it himself.
He
I
actually
think
did. No, he actually did as a kid train in Taekwondo.
that's cool.
Like he literally had skills like he had.
Yeah, and it's crazy, right? Because he really wasn't.
And his actually, do you know what's funny is his brother is the one that auditioned for the role, but he got it. He was
how funny. Is his brother in anything?
it doesn't say his brother's name here. It just says that his brother was
Okay.
the one that auditioned. And then of course he did Goonies, but then he didn't do anything. Like he didn't do any starring roles. And
Yeah.
he was a big Jackie Chan fan. Is it? I don't know. It's interesting. But I'm really excited because I've heard a lot of good things about that other movie that he's in, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, I've heard it's
really
really
wanna go see it.
interesting too. I've not seen it
I don't know if
yet.
it's still in the theater. I knew there was another movie that I was wanting to go see. I know that one's out, but so yeah, it's a perplexing movie. I mean, it's definitely an adventure, like you said. I mean, the story moves along really quick. I mean, it's like, like within a week from when they parachuted in their raft to when he returns with the liberated children.
Yes.
We didn't talk at all about the scene from the bridge scene
At the end.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I was really struck by was just the deep insanity and darkness of the evil priest guy.
Mm-hmm.
That he's happy to just push his own men off the ladder into the crocodile or whatever to try to knock Indy down. It was just so diabolical. I'm like, what in the world?
Well, we have to just mention real quick, if we're talking about like death, right? You have these scenes of just these alligators tearing flesh apart.
They were hungry.
It just continues the trend, right? It's really, really, I mean, it's not super graphic, but it is.
No, like as you watch it, it's real implied. You see them
Yes.
rolling. There's like some fabric, but you don't see like a hand or
Yeah,
like
I think I saw some, like maybe you saw some flesh just once or something.
Yeah,
but it's not
like,
graphic yet.
Just like the
So then, so what were you going to say about the scene, or what was your?
I don't know. We hadn't
the
talked
scene
about it because it's a fascinating scenario where Indy is like caught in the middle of the bridge with the minions coming from both sides, and he's all like,
yeah,
and he pulls out the knife, and then they walk out, Short Round and the girl like walk out, and
why do they walk out again? Are they forced?
Oh no,
out?
he's
on that
priest.
side,
yeah,
right?
because he's like, I think he catches
the
on.
other way.
He catches on to what he's about to do, and so he
Okay.
takes the girl and Short Round out, so he won't do it.
Yeah.
But then Indy's all like, grab onto something, like he says it in Mandarin or whatever, and he's like, "Lady, you're gonna want to hold on. We're going for a ride."
And so he does this kind of like he's willing to sacrifice himself and others for the
Well, yeah, he doesn't want him to have the
benefit
stones.
of,
Well, he
yeah,
doesn't want him to have the power to do whatever he's doing.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Which
And
is
he
the
wants the children to be able to not get abducted. Like, I think that's what he does, right? He does it for the betterment of the children, I think.
yeah, he definitely wants to. I mean,
And
they're
he
all
puts the children
enslaved,
before like risking these historical artifacts are not as important to him as being
right?
able to stop what's going on
Yeah,
with
because the guy
these
makes some
kids and these
comment about like
people.
that's just three. There's two more. I'll find them.
Yeah.
Go ahead and throw them, or go ahead and be fed to the alligators. I'll go poach all those alligators and get those stones back. Like, don't worry about
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean? But two of them are lost. I mean, he just is able to grab the
Yeah, they
one. The
fall
guy grabs
down.
the one. He's able to catch the one, to restore it. But
But then that guy's dead anyways. But I mean,
yeah,
I
he
guess
gets
someone else
crocodiled.
could find him, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm like, I guess they could be recoverable because they ended up in the water.
But he at least got rid of the priest,
He
which
did.
was the
Mola Ram was the priest.
Molaram.
Mola Ram was the priest name.
Yeah, I don't, with the ending scene, I just always remember, I remember Indy cutting, and then the whole thing with the priest trying to take Indiana Jones's heart.
Yeah, like in that moment, he's like, "Cover your heart, Indy," which is interesting. Which is really a profoundly intense metaphor for me. That like evil can possess your heart. That it can tear out your heart. You know, you could that it can pull out your heart and you could still live. I mean, isn't that true? I mean, don't tons of people lose their heart to darkness and dark things? You
Well,
know,
I think trauma and fear do that also, right? Where your ability to connect and to feel is, anything but that pain and that fear is really gone,
it's been
right? and
tore
and
from you.
yeah, and it feels, I think, like you've been robbed, and really kind of part of that journey back is understanding, that I still have control, I still have agency. That's really an important part of recovery through trauma, right? Especially if there's been someone who's been sexually traumatized.
Yeah.
And so I think that it is really interesting, not only with evil, but I think with fear and trauma and hurt. We feel a sense of we don't have control, or we lose that ability to control, when in actuality it's still there. It's just that trauma and hurt and pain needs to be healed and dealt with, so that we can see that we have that ability to move
Which is
forward.
interesting because it's interesting. One of the things that's happening in the bridge scene is it's kind of all out in the open. The
Hmm.
priest is working his dark arts in like the basement
Yeah, it's
dungeon
not
of
in the
the
temple anymore.
yeah, and then now
Yep.
it's out in the open. It's being exposed. India is exposing it for all the world to see, which you've got like the British, soldiers that come in that really help at the end.
Yeah. That start
Shoot
just
off.
shooting,
Yeah, they just
just start killing
indiscriminate.
everyone.
Yeah, just indiscriminately, just doing what the what colonies have done, or nations that have colonies, just indiscriminately killing everyone, shooting everyone. Is really interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of powerful metaphors with the darkness of the Temple of Doom,
Yeah.
and kind of bringing to light, shining light on, and that, and I think that that's a really important metaphor. It seems like something that's so lost or diluted in the, I don't know, it's a kind of weird word to use, but like the orgy of information, to
Sure.
like to find our way through it to what is true. But the only thing that can deliver us from the madness is trying to get a handle on what is real and what is true, and kind of bringing it to light, which is one of the things I think that's happening at the end of this movie, like we've said. um so that you can kind of reclaim the things that
Well, I think
allow you
it's
to have center or grounding, or the rock is this kind of metaphor of something that
well,
is
and I think that's part of the control, right? Where they control the prince, or they control Indiana Jones. I think that
possess
oftentimes in life, our environment, we don't realize how much our environment can
can
control
possess us
us.
can
Yeah.
possess us or shade us or color us or
Yeah. And
overshadow.
even to go a step further, our perception of our environment,
Right.
right?
Or
So
because it's
sometimes it's
shaded in the
not just the
context,
environment, it's our perception too.
right? Shaded in the context of our maturation or development, like we've
Yeah.
been talking about, right?
Hmm.
And how important it is to expose yourself to different ideas or get out into the
Sure.
world and experience the world and take a view or seek
Well,
to
and it is
understand what people
interesting.
are driven by or
Yeah,
something.
because there's a fear, right, of differentness, and it kind of shuts us off from connecting with others just because someone has a different opinion or different idea, and we can all have our own opinions and ideas, and still be able to connect and
Well,
and
we need
and
to. I mean, to me, we need to not get trapped in a dogmatic system, but instead examine the individual truths of, I mean, because we all need a culture
well,
to grow from.
yeah, and I think to
And
do that, we have to have that balance, right? We have to work constantly on having that balance so that we're not stuck in the fear or the flight that we can't hear what someone is saying, or share,
yeah,
because that fear really keeps it closes our ears, and it makes it harder for our heart to be open and to hear and really come together. I think
yeah,
as a therapist, that's something that we really have to work on and be trained to do, is just to be present and be there in a non-judgmental way, to where we can hear what's going on and really understand their perspective, even if it's different than ours, and we
sure.
develop a relationship with that person to where they trust and connect. And I do too, even if their viewpoint's different, I'm able to connect with them. And I think that that's something, it's easier for me to do in my work role setting, because I know that's like what I'm doing.
What your
And I
role is
struggle
to
at
do.
times outside of work to do that. I think I think my personality is I try to do that pretty good, but I still struggle outside or even inside, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and of course, our work environment is very monolithic. Like, I mean, it's very same, it's not like we're having, I mean, we get some uniqueness, but there's a lot of people that are deep within the same world that we're in. So,
Yeah, I tend to feel that was maybe more true 10 to 15 years ago than it is now, for me at least. With the one population that I see the most, yeah, they're usually kind of in the same boat. But then the other part of our job, I feel like I've been getting a lot of variety, and it's interesting, uh just in my experience, kind of the things that I've heard and seen. But anyways, I'm getting off track. I think, yeah, it definitely can be that way at times, especially depending on what type of agency you work for.
right.
Certain agencies only serve certain populations or demographics,
But to that,
based on need of whatever the grant funder is or insurance
but
covers. And
to the point though, that's one of the things that the Indiana Jones movies at least attempt to bring you is they
yeah.
take you to this other world. I mean, the first one is the Israel world, right? Like that part of the world.
Uh-huh.
And then this one, it's, you start in China, end up in India. And then the
I don't
third
remember
one,
where the third one's at.
yeah, where
Is
is it?
that with the Germans?
Yeah, there's a part of it that's got to be in Germany, right? Like, because he goes to
Yeah, I think
Germany
the
to
third
get the
one
book because
is.
they're like burning
Oh,
books
no,
and
no, no.
stuff.
The first one, the Germans are trying to
Get
get
the
the Ark,
tablets, yeah, the
the
Ark of the
Covenant.
Covenant.
Yeah.
But it's still, I imagine, in that part of the world, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Man, I haven't seen the first one in so
Well, that's
long.
a theme that's in all three movies, right? Is
Yeah, it
there are these
is.
artifacts that give regular people supernatural power over
Yes.
other people, right? I mean,
Yes.
the Ark and the Covenant is being sought to have power. The stones and this priest is, you know, cascaded a dream state, a dark dream state over a whole group of people.
Mhm.
And the Holy Grail's, point is, to be able to have everlasting life.
Yes.
The third one, the Knight Templar guy's like, he chose poorly after his face like melts to nothingness. This
I
is
do remember
definitely
that scene.
the
Yes.
chalice of a this is the chalice of a king. And he's all like, he chose poorly. Look as his face melts off.
Yeah, I think the three I can remember bits and pieces, especially when you bring things up. The fourth one, I think that's the newest one, right? With the
Wasn't there a
guy,
fifth
the
one
kid from
too?
Transformers. I don't know. Is there a fifth one? There could be.
Isn't there
I don't
like
know. I
another
lost
one?
track after
I
three.
think they're making another one too.
They
Well, the
are
one of
doing a
them
new
is
one.
like the crystal skull thing, which
Yeah,
is
is that the
like
fourth
turns
one?
out to be aliens, but I don't know. I feel like there might be like two.
There
I
could
don't know.
be. There very well could be. We're we don't know.
We don't know.
Anyone listening, tell us, inform us.
Yeah. So,
But
well,
yeah,
and
it was definitely a fun movie to watch,
yeah,
and
it's a great show.
it is nostalgic. It's not so Indiana, like I said in the beginning, Indiana Jones is not one that I watched a ton growing up. Like other movies, especially the one we're going to talk about next, I watched a lot as a kid, and so it's really nostalgic. But it's still, I love, like I said, I still had a whip. I still wore a hat. Well, not a real whip, but even
I
when I would go to Disneyland as a kid, I always wanted the Indiana Jones stuff,
I
or Star Wars stuff.
I tried the hat, but I couldn't pull it off. I didn't have the persona to rock Indy's hat.
Yeah, as a kid, I
But
had just a cheap hat. It might have even been plastic. It might have actually been just one of those plastic cowboy hats. Remember those?
yeah.
I may have had one of
His
those.
his whip skills are no joke though,
Oh
dude.
yeah, they're legit.
I mean, I always, he's always like he's always getting himself out of trouble with that thing. He's
Yeah.
always swinging from somewhere, and I'm thinking that might have been hard.
I
That
kind
might.
of wonder, is that how it works in real life, or is
I
this just
don't think
movie
so.
magic?
I don't think so. I don't think you could whip that thing around enough to then jump and swing and then get it
Yeah, I
undone.
love
Like
how
I
he
think
undoes
that
it, but
it's
just
just
like a
super
flick of
easy.
his wrist. I'm like, well, maybe it works that way. I don't know.
Yeah, but
But to be weight bearing, I would think it would have to
really get
overlap,
around.
right? Like
Yeah, a
it would,
couple times.
yeah, you'd have to overlap it across, but you'd have to like overlap and cross the
I think
whip.
so. I think
And I
so.
would think unhooking that would be really
Really
tough.
impossible.
But I don't know. I'm not a whip.
You'd have to have
I'm
some
not a
whip,
whip expert, a
some whip
whipologist.
skills. A whipologist. I'm not a whipologist,
I
but
am not either.
but again, this is okay because it's movie magic
Oh,
and
it's
it's
what makes
allowed.
it so fun.
It's allowed to be fun. It's
Well,
allowed to
the whole
be.
the raft falling out of the plane, it's just ridiculous, but it's what makes it so fun. And even
Yeah, they go
when they're
from
sliding down
sledding. They go from sledding to whitewater
to a
rafting.
river. Yep.
It's like incredible. Like, good job,
But I
Steven.
love the background, like when they're on the snow going down the mountain, and you can tell it's not really
Totally fake. Wasn't there a
but
part
it's
two when
beautiful. I
when
love
they
it.
were when they were doing the car scene where he's groping her to try to get the antidote because she grabs it and sticks it in her dress, which I don't understand too. I'm like, lady, why would you not give him the
I
antidote?
know some of the
Like
stuff's
he's
just so.
dying. Like it's
I
like
think
he's
they're saying a
dying.
lot about kind of their view on
Like
women
of
in this
women, and
movie.
that's big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. They're just gold diggers because she just wanted
Yep.
diamonds, didn't care about his life.
And then the one thing you
and
need
she
in
was
life,
just a
she's gonna hold
damsel.
from you just out of spite or whatever. Like it felt really,
Yeah.
it felt pretty strong.
And
in
then
this
the
movie.
gaminess that they were all playing with each other. I would have been the best crusade
Oh
or
yeah,
best adventure you would have ever had, or something like that. I'm like,
the
I don't
whole
think I've
when they
ever
get to
had
the
a.
palace and the whole drama with them doing what they're doing and him just going to the other room and like that was a
But then
little
he's
too
like
much.
about to
But
get
then they have the
strangled
secret
out.
assassin, which is cool, right?
Yeah, the
That's where I
secret
get
assassin was
drawn
really
back
cool.
in. He just peers out of the wall, and then he finds the
And
boot
he gets
statue,
and he gets
the
kind of
adventure begins.
strangely killed. It's like the ceiling fan was a little bit more diabolical than ceiling fans are. I think it's like
It would
the
have
whip
fallen out of the
the
wall.
whip gets like full up. I'm like, I don't know, because there was all it's kind of
It's
like
a strong
and like
fan.
and it's like it's kind of like it's done. Where it would have actually probably taken him another 7 minutes to die hanging there, but it kind of is instantaneously. I guess the power of the ceiling fan
Movie magic.
cracks his neck, and then he goes and seduces the rock
I'm
woman.
not a whipologist, so I don't know. Who knows?
We'll have to get an expert whipologist
Yeah.
on here to help us.
I think isn't that what he
understand.
used? Or no, did he use a string? I can't remember now. Or a blanket?
Was it the sheet? It
It
wasn't his
was the
whip, and
sheet.
it was the
That's
sheet
right.
from
I
the
think
bed
it
that he
was a
wraps
sheet.
around, and then
I'm not a
something.
sheetologist, so I don't know how
Well,
that.
what about the guy? What happened? What did the guy get pulled into the rock smasher? That was a horrifying death.
Oh, that was probably the like that for me, even though you don't really see it.
You don't see, you just
You
see the
see the
blood
blood,
stain. You just
but
see the
that
blood
for
stain.
me was
This is
the
horrifying.
cringiest part of the
Because he
movie.
also it kind of feels bad. He's just trying to beat up the guy, but then the guy gets his legs like tore up, and
Yeah.
that's the guy. Was that
And
the
they
guy that
show
was
him
whipping the?
slowly going in,
Yeah, like
right?
getting like. But
Uh-huh.
isn't that the guy that was like whipping children? So if anybody
He
deserves to
was the
be
bad.
squished, he
Yeah.
was the bad guy. He was
Yeah.
whipping defenseless children, so he can
Yeah.
die by a smashing
Guess so.
rock or whatever it is, the bulldozer of
Whatever
death.
they want to do. I'm
But
glad
yeah,
they
he
didn't
got
kill him
caught, right?
more.
Didn't something get pulled around his feet, and then it ended up, and Indy even like tries to help him for a second,
Yeah.
but he's like, "Sorry, dude, you're done."
Yeah. He tries to help him. And I think
For a
Short
second.
Round even has something to do with that where
Like
I
they
can't
try to put
remember.
something in there to
Yeah.
stop it or something
Yeah, I
like
think
that.
Short Round is trying to help, which is big because Short Round has been a slave for like the last little bit, right? Wasn't he?
Not short round. You're
Oh no,
talking
no,
about
that's
the
afterwards.
prince. You're talking about the prince. I don't know if you're talking about the
No,
prince.
Short Round gets enslaved at one point. I can't remember when though in the movie now. Remember he's
Oh,
shackled up and he has to get himself
that's
loose.
how he wakes up Indy though, right? Because he's all like, "Wake up, Indy," and he grabs the thing. So yeah, he's also been kind of put into slave status, but he's there
Yeah.
somehow when Indy's about to get. But Indy's a support. Was Indy getting put into the thing to get descended into the pit? And Short Round does it? Is that all come to fruition there, or was he just
No, I
helping
don't
him?
think Indiana Jones ever gets in the thing. Just the female character gets in the thing. And
Female,
she gets lowered down.
the girl.
Yeah.
Oh,
You're talking about
she's
that like
about to be sacrificed. Oh, and he's
yeah.
putting her in it. That's
He
what it was.
is. Yeah, because
Yeah, he's putting her, and
he's
then
under.
Short Round wakes him up, and then he kind of plays along for a second,
Yeah. And then she
and
goes
then
up and
gets
down, up and down. And
up
then
and down and up and down.
finally
That's right. Yeah. Oh, because
finally gets
that's the other
rescued.
guy that his body gets stuck in the descending pole thing.
Yes.
That's a pretty horrific one too.
Yes.
There's some, yeah, it's a pretty gnarly,
It's
owie
got a
movie.
lot. It's got a lot. But what
Got
I
a
mean,
lot
I
in
wouldn't
there.
expect anything less. It's Spielberg and
Indiana
Lucas,
Jones.
and I feel like that's
It's
you're gonna
fun.
get some
Yeah,
heavy hitters.
but it's a gorgeous movie.
Oh yeah, it's
It's
a great one.
visually
I
amazing. The
think
sound's incredible. I mean,
I
come
can't
on, dun
speak.
dun dun dun
Yeah,
dun dun. Dun.
I can't
Like, I
speak
mean,
much
what's
for
better
the
than that?
fourth one, but I definitely would say the first three you have. I mean, if you haven't
Yeah.
seen Indiana Jones 1, 2, 3, you have to
Please,
watch them.
they're great.
They're amazing.
All
Thanks,
right,
everyone.
been a good time.
Adios, amigos.
See ya.